look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's me, the Einstein of Wall Street, infinite possibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I brought you absolutely everything here, but at the end of the day, it's all about the human story, right? And so, I couldn't be more excited today to bring you somebody who I have to say has changed my life, in so many different ways. Mostly for the good, a little bit bad here and there, but I'm telling you, this is a guy who's actually a Renaissance man, and I'm humbled when I say that. So I'm honored to have you on the show, man.
Such an honor to be here.
Oh my God,
wow.
It's so exciting, And so Adam, this is Adam Pace, okay? And we go back a long way, right? So a number of years ago, Adam came to me, and I was doing social media, and I was fairly mid-range influencer.
I think I found you from a New York Nico video.
Okay, yeah, which was also another one of my look. It's funny. Social media is fascinating because there are people that interviews that will sort of change your life. They're pivotal in different ways, and they open up doors in a different way. But anyway, so Adam came to me out of nowhere, and he said, "Look, I'd like to interview you walking out of the New York Stock Exchange for 30 days and just interacting with the public outside." And we came up with the name Einstein's Elementary, and he wanted it just to be basic, talk about the fact that a stock's like a pizza pie, keep it as simple as possible, and then just sort of do what I do, right? And look, the month turned out to be an incredible month. We had, marching bands. We walked around with a 25-pound Hershey's Kiss giving out chocolate. We did the great S&P video, which went really viral, right? And I gave out bronze bulls to all these tourists and all that. So for me, it was pivotal in so many ways to see that I was capable of doing that. That was another part of my ability to sort of, in a really comfortable, easy way, first of all, just to freestyle, right? I was not as confident about the fact that you could just throw me into that environment and just talk and interact that way. But it was amazing to see how, that's just a whole, literally this block outside this building is a whole ecosystem in its own way, which is absolutely amazing.
Playground. But I think the coolest thing to watch was, it was the first time I think you had a young audience, and we would watch on a week-to-week the difference of kids leaving school. They were like, "Oh my God, that's Einstein," and we would watch, and
so
it would
put it on TikTok.
Right? It was on TikTok. It was a brand new account, and I remember you would start sending me texts of like all the people working here are like rolling their eyes because their kids are at the dinner table. Like, do you work with Einstein?
I know, and they can't stand my fame and fortune, and they're going like, now I got to deal with my son thinking you're the greatest thing in the world. Yeah, you know what? It was amazing, and it led to so many other things. We ended up doing Madison Square Garden, right, with Earn Your Leisure, and we did a number of other things which were super exciting. But Adam, as I said, is a Renaissance man, and there's a lot of Adam I don't know, a lot of how he came up. He obviously was, has been in social media, and but there's something. There's a lot more to him, and so I just really want you to give me a little breakdown.
100%.
Like Adam at 13 years old.
Adam at 13 years old was obsessed with making in Hollywood. He wanted to be a writer, a director. He was living in LA. One of my favorite stories.
Did you grow up in New York?
I grew up in LA, born and raised. I lived in New York 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I was so obsessed with making in Hollywood, I had a podcast actually when I was 17. It was like right around the time that Serial was like the #1 podcast in the world. And I just wanted to have an excuse to interview people in Hollywood because I thought, like, I don't know anybody in this industry, but maybe I have a microphone. They'll let me come talk to them and pick their brain about how they got to where they are today, and maybe I can get some advice too.
Did you have the confidence that you do today? Because
I had confidence in emails. In fact, I had so much confidence in emails that I would read emails that I sent when I was like 16 years old, and I'm like, where did you get the balls to send an email to like the head of production at HBO being like, I've got a show for you, you got to hear my pitch, and I would get the meetings. Yeah. And so I think I learned at an early age that no one really reaches out to these people. Yeah. And around this time, Sony Pictures, if you remember, had gotten hacked by North Korea because of that movie, The Interview.
We were trading
exactly.
Stock here. Yeah.
And everyone's emails at Sony Pictures were leaked on WikiLeaks. And so you could just type in anyone's name in Hollywood and you would probably find their email, whether it was an executive or a producer or an actor. Wow. And so I ended up having this podcast where my first guests were like Jay Leno and the head of Universal Studios and these Academy Award-winning producers. Yes. And I would kind of use an excuse afterwards to ask for an internship most of the time. And that was kind of how I got my first jobs in the industry. So always kind of went back to, even though I was obsessed with Hollywood, of just like, what can I do right now in this like digital content space? So
I look, it's very funny because I'll often talk to kids. It's so funny. People are so insecure, younger people, about that they think, oh, I can't reach out to that person. I can't send them an email. And I said, what is the worst thing? There's no door that you can't knock on, because the worst they'll say is no, or they'll shut the door and you're a big deal.
Of course.
Right? At the end of the day, we learn more from those kind of failure moments than we do for success moments. And the fact that most people are afraid to do it
Yes.
means that you doing it, you may be the one that stands out, and they're going to go, you know what? I've been dying for someone to reach out to me in that way.
And I think most of us, especially like now that I'm at this age where I'm starting to have young people reach out, I think we feel like we owe it to the next generation because people were so gracious to us when we were coming up. So I think there's a part of you that feels like you need to give back. The worst that ever happened was like, I really wanted to get Jeffrey Katzenberg on the podcast, and I would email this guy's office like once a week, and I got a phone call one day from his assistant that was like, hey, is this Adam Faze? I'm like, yes. He's like, hey, this is so-and-so from Jeffrey Katzenberg office. He'd like you to stop emailing him. It's like, okay, I'll stop emailing. Thank you.
Your stomach dropped.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I once, sort of a strange moment though, my brother was a well-known documentary filmmaker, Oscar winner, all this stuff. He ended up dying really young at 60. And after, he was very close friends with Bill Clinton. So the movie he made that got him on the map was called The Man from Hope, which is the one that was showed at the Democratic Convention that got Clinton elected. That was his film.
Wow.
And he worked on it with my wife. Unfortunately, they both are gone. But anyway, after he passed away, and he was close friends with Bill Clinton and whatnot. So after he passed away, I was home. I came back. He lived in LA. And my son was sort of on the couch chilling out, and the phone rings, and it was not unknown, but it said something bizarre. And I picked up the phone, and this guy says, would you please hold for the president? And I'm going like, who the fuck is this, right? Like, who's messing with me now? And they're going, no, sir, this isn't a joke. Would you hold for the president? I said, sure. And I put it on speaker so my son could hear it. And he was probably, like waking and baking or something. And so I said, of course, no problem. And the next thing I hear is, hello, is this Peter? And I'm going, yes. And he goes, this is Bill Clinton. I'm here with Hillary. And it was like this hysterical moment. Like, would I have believed that ever happened? And we had this long
needed a
chat.
witness. That's why you actually had it on speaker.
That's why I had Ben. Yeah. Right. And Benny is cracking up in the background. I'm going, and he goes, what's happening in the back? I said, sir, it's my son. He's cracking up because, first of all, he doesn't believe it's you, because it sounds like an SNL skit, because his voice is so, copyable, right? And then who would have thought he would have said? Anyway, that was just sort of.
I mean, same sort of story. At the beginning of the podcast, I wanted to have a big first guest, and I happened to just see Jay Leno at a taping of a show that I was at, and I went up to him like, hey, Mr. Leno, I'm 17 years old, I'm starting this podcast, I'd love for you to be my first guest on the show. And he's like, give me his assistant's phone number. And so I'm working with the assistant trying to find a date, and I'm like, hey, any date that works, I'll make myself available, whatever it is. And one night I'm having dinner with my parents, obviously I'm like living at home, and the house phone rings, which is very strange. And I just felt the need to pick up the house phone.
In the day of house
exactly.
phones, right.
And I felt the need, like, I should answer this, even though it's like most of the times my parents, friends calling or whatever.
Landline.
And I remember picking up the phone, and it's like, hey, Adam, it's Jay Leno. And he's doing the classic Jay Leno voice. And it was like the same thing. I went pale as a ghost. My parents are like, who's on the phone? It's Jay Leno.
You know what? At the end of the day, what you can get out of this is, that's something. Your confidence is spectacular, right? And it's funny, whenever I would mention you, people would go like, that guy's everywhere. Like you're kind of like, Zelig, and you show up like in the middle of nowhere, and you're like wondering what the heck was going on. Anyway, so that was the beginning. But okay, so let's go back. So that was you at 13, 15, 17. So you did the podcast.
I ended up not going to college. For me, I had started working in the industry at such a young age, and I didn't have a family that worked in the business.
Right.
And so
what did your father do?
Was a mortgage loan officer for Washington Mutual back in the day, and then later Wells and Citi and all these other places. And then my mom was a realtor, still is.
Okay.
And I hadn't gotten into any LA-based schools. I got into NYU, and I knew that New York would come at some point, but I don't think that quickly. And I also just was very conscious that I didn't think I was going to graduate college. And so for me, it was a numbers game of like, do I want to go for 2 years, have $150K of student loan debt for a film degree that I'm not even going to use in the first place? And so I kind of just started feeling like, hey, LA's the center of the film business. I am starting to meet people in the industry. I just got to stay here and stick it out. Right. And it was tough. I mean, I was working for free in the daytime for producers. I was club promoting at night to make money, but in doing that was making relationships with a lot of younger talent that were my age and kind of coming up in the scene, and ended up spending the next 8 years of my life working in traditional Hollywood for producers or studios or making my own projects, music videos, commercials. And it wasn't until the pandemic that all of a sudden I just watched myself start watching so much stuff on my phone. Right. And I found myself watching less and less TV and really a lot less movies. And I just remember this feeling of like, if me, this kid who's absolutely obsessed with the film industry, has always wanted to be here my entire life, and I'm watching TikTok, we're cooked. Like every single person younger than me is only watching this stuff. Yeah. And so that's when I had the opportunity to move to New York and join a startup to just figure out what.
That was what Mad
Realities
Realities was? Wow. Okay.
And just figure out like what's next, because it's clearly not this. This is going to be around, but it's dying.
Yeah.
And so what is the next thing? How do you keep television alive in these brand new platforms like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram?
Right. And so TikTok became your platform,
yeah,
right?
Really
and that's where you did
TikTok
some of the
and Instagram
wild disruptive stuff.
And again, that was just purely out of selfishness. Like those were the platforms I was using. And so for me, I at that time wasn't a huge YouTube consumer. And so it was like, I think I can figure out this algorithm just because I spent so much time watching it. And the one thing that we had an idea about that it kind of pushed back against a lot of things is at that point everyone said the way to make it on TikTok is you have to post 3 times a day.
Right.
You have to be filming on an iPhone. You've got to sort of have just a creator talking to their phone. That's how it works. And like I always was like, I think that's what has worked, which is why we now have rules of like, this is what works. But it's not to say that if you try something else, it won't work too.
So you've always had a little bit of a disruptive approach.
And that's where we had this idea of like, what would it look like to make repeatable TV shows if this is television?
Is that what Mad Reality ended up doing?
They ended up turning it like kind of into one of these companies as well. When I joined, it was a crypto interactive media company, and we made a dating show together. That's a whole other story for another time. But no, I think a big part here was just if TikTok is television, then every TV channel needs to be repeated. And one of the first things was like, hey, well, a finance channel needs to exist on these platforms. There are certain creators that are doing finance education on these platforms. But like, how do we do this in a way that feels more packaged, in a way that feels like a show? And that's when your name came up.
Yeah. Okay, and look, and it was amazing. I mean, it really, it catapulted me into a whole nother level. I mean, as far as me growing as somebody, because look, many years ago, I mean, everyone would ask me like, when did you realize that you could do what you do? Which is literally be dropped down in the middle of some, like Milan and talk to 5,000 people without a script, without knowing the questions, and just freestyle, right? Because that's a skill, and you have that. Right, it comes from. Look, you know what? It's funny. I'm sure you are the same. You still wake up with like butterflies in your stomach, but for some reason you know that this is what you want to do, and 100%. You love what you're doing.
100%.
Right.
And I will say a story about you though. What's so funny is I remember then like a year ago, my parents sending me a video, and all of a sudden you're on Aaron Burnett, and I'm like, oh my God, you're a correspondent on Aaron Burnett. What the hell is going on?
Well, you know what? It's funny because I've dipped and bobbed and weaved through different levels of conservatism or not. I was always like an equal opportunity because for a while I did, a number of different TV shows, and then I started doing Fox, right? And so, most of the floor are very conservative, very Republican, and I tend not to be. And then I befriended Neil Cavuto, he's somebody I've known for 20 years. He used to be here on the floor years ago, and we just became friends. And he's very Fox-ish and whatnot, but we always maintained a certain lane. And he was really helpful to me when I got sick with COVID. He was really there for me, and so I mean he's done. I did shows for him for a while, and then curiously you mentioned the Aaron Burnett thing because that was another sort of a weird threshold. So Aaron Burnett used to work on the floor with Bob Pisani and this guy Mark Haynes, who passed away. She was the one who gave me the name Einstein.
Oh my God,
okay, she just one day said, you know what, I'm going to call you Einstein, and I said, okay, it's done. And she used to sit outside with this guy Mark Haynes out on the fire hydrant. He would smoke cigarettes, and I'd walk into work, and they would both say, okay, if Einstein's having a good hair day, the market's going up. And they started using that as sort of a premise for the show. Anyway, February 19th came along, and when Trump first mentioned tariffs and Mexico and Canada, and the market started sort of to tumble, and obviously the next 3 months it went down 20%. And so I'd only been on her show once. So she left the floor after 20 years, went to Upfront to CNN, and has had this show. And it's very liberal, right? And but she's charming, and so we've always had a friendship going. So she calls me and she goes, you know what? Nobody can really give me a sense of what's going on with this crowd, whatever's happening here. The market's imploding, and I need someone to explain it so that people will understand it. And I have a somewhat financy audience, but it's not all. It's CNN, so there's 75 million people. So anyway, would you come and do a show? I get there 2 years ago. I started to have a podcast with this guy Dan Ives, who's the #1 tech analyst in the world. And he's sort of like me. He dresses in these wild outfits, right? And he's sort of a little short Jewish guy, curmudgeon type of character, who wears these, he was voted by the New York Post the best dressed man on Wall Street.
Oh my God.
He actually just came out with a line of clothing.
Wow.
Right, which has got just tie-dyed, and it's fascinating. So anyway, he and I had this show for a year. Unbeknownst to her, I show up at CNN and he's in the green room.
Oh my God.
And I'm going, what are you doing here? He goes, well, I'm on the show. So I said, well, so am I. He goes, well, let's have some fun. Because we realize that we have a similar approach. We're really accessible. We're not like sort of the crusty stuff here that is not that accessible to people about the markets. We break it down in a sort of a fun way. So we went on the show for one night, and we got out there, and I said, Erin, you know that we are like friends, and we have a show together? And she said, no way. Well, this should be fun. We ended up staying for 6.5 months.
Wow.
Every night through that whole period of the whole tariff thing. Literally from February 19th until mid-July, we were there every single night. And it ended up skyrocketing her ratings to the highest that ever a financial show had gotten. But anyway, so let's go back to you. So where are you today?
So our experience started 4 years of producing in this world of digital content.
Okay.
And I think
so
in the beginning
it
started with, short form is like the future of television. I think now we're in this place where it's like sort of like everything's television. TikTok's television, YouTube's television, live streaming is television.
And what are you defining as television? Is something you see
something that
repetitively?
you're spending hours a day consuming. Even if that's a bunch of 2-minute videos or 1 6-hour live stream.
Of one subject, or is it just content?
Well, I think like when someone is going on TikTok for 2 hours straight, like I consider that them watching TV, even though they're probably watching 200 videos from 200 different people.
Right.
And so I think.
How long were the shows that we were putting out?
We were putting out basically a 2-minute episode a day.
That was it.
Basically it. It was something really short form. And I think now I'm in this place of being someone who's a producer. I love having an eye for talent, of being like, this is someone I want to work with, and let's like sort of craft a format around it. Now expanding beyond just short form, of like working a lot more in the long form space, in the live streaming world, and kind of just focusing both on the talent I want to work with, but the formats that I just wish existed for everyone to watch.
So talent plus platform.
Exactly. I think in this like creator era, it is so much the face of the person that's talking that's important. And I think having a good relationship with that person, like I think for me, I've always said like the secret to success on any show I've ever worked on is that the people that have hosted those shows were someone that I wanted to be a lot closer with. Yeah. And I think that if I had that feeling, a lot of other people watching the show would feel that way as well.
Well, so let's talk about Kareem. Right? Kareem's 100%. A perfect example.
So Kareem,
you have an amazing ability of obviously, like if I may say so, of being able to find talent, right?
Yes. And Kareem was another one of these cases. I met him on a dating show that we were making. He was like a guest judge one night, and we started talking.
He's the most unlikely guy you'd ever meet.
He was in his late 30s. He had been doing the comedy circuit for a little bit, and I just fell in love with him. I was like, I want to be this guy's best friend. I think he's the coolest guy, the most interesting man in the world. And I sat him down and I said something very similar to you. I said, I want to make TV shows for TikTok. Do you have any idea for a repeatable format that it wouldn't matter if you didn't see every single episode, but you could catch every few and understand what was going on?
Right.
And one of the ideas he pitches me is I've always wanted to hail a cab in New York and tell the driver, take me to your favorite place and keep the meter running while we spend the day with each other. And we were making that show the same exact time we were making your show. And similarly, that show has close to 1 million followers now. It only ever stayed short form. Kareem and I are now bringing it back as a long form YouTube show next year, where the episodes will be 20, 30 minutes long. We're going to go to Cuba to do our final episode. And
did that ever get international? That was only
we did one episode in London at that point. And again, similar. I mean, Kareem is now, in my opinion, the face of TikTok. Subway Takes, his show where he interviews people on the subway and kind of asks them for their hot take, is the #1 show on TikTok. I mean, no show gets more viewers than that show.
And look, and he's on, he's
on the cover of the New York Mag yesterday.
It was, really? Yeah.
He was.
Look, and he's on, he's doing all day.
He was on Seth Meyers, last week. So it's crazy. I mean, it's Kareem and you are both celebrities now. And it's so funny to look back at 3 years ago of like, well, should we do something together? What can we do?
Look, it's amazing. So so I love that. And so tell me, when we reconnected recently, I know that you did an interview with I always miss it, TBPN, right? Which is amazing, right? That it's an incredible platform. It's like podcast platform.
Exactly.
I hate things that sort of get labeled podcast because it's almost.
Well, again, like I would say that's another thing that I would say is a TV show. Like because
show.
a lot of people are watching on their TV, and it's something that's daily. It's a live show, and I think it's eating CNBC's lunch.
100%. So they bought a studio here. At least they've leased a studio
Yeah.
here on the floor, and they're going to be doing things. IPOs, from our perspective.
I think that one
IPOs
right
are
over there.
specialties, exactly. And that's exciting. And then, so they were up here doing it. One of the IPOs that came out recently, which was a huge hit. I was doing my thing. We did not know each other, and I could see what they were doing, and I sort of went over and said, I've traded more IPOs than anyone on earth. They're going, you're in. And we did a piece, and it was just, I had gone from 250,000 to 500,000 already, and we sort of talked about that, and that was exciting. So what's your relationship to the, so we obviously know that Netflix and Warner Brothers, and who's the third party? What?
Paramount.
Thank you. And Paramount are obviously in a hostile takeover situation. What's your relationship to this
I mean, my
story?
favorite thing is reading Barry Diller's take, which he's going to be like, just be prepared for a long fight and nobody's going to win. Because I think he obviously has a very similar experience going against Sumner Redstone. And I had just finished reading his autobiography, and it goes so in depth about how bloody the process was of this sort of hostile takeover situation. Look, I think, again,
were you up for some kind of a? Were you?
No,
doing
it's
something
more so.
production?
I mean, again, just like being someone who's on the younger side of the industry, and you know, contrary to a lot of people's public belief, I still have so much love and care and respect for Hollywood, and I'm someone who like feels like we need to shepherd it into the new generation. And I think one of the things that's made me so sad these last few years is just seeing how Hollywood has refused to innovate and instead sort of sees their business dying and sort of is holding on to what they have left and sort of figuring out like, hey, we're the greatest storytellers on earth, and the entire internet now is a storytelling platform. We've never been more needed,
and
I think
never more.
They've removed themselves.
They're literally
from that
like
position.
the Eastman Kodak.
Exactly, and they sort of let everyone else take over. And I think the only optimistic side I have as someone who did leave LA, and by the way, you can tell that the industry is crumbling. LA is a ghost town. I mean, there's more for lease signs than there are people, and the streets are all broken up. And so, you know, I think the only optimism I have right now.
When was the last time you actually went to a movie theater to go to a?
That's what I like to tell everybody. It's like, look, you can say that Netflix destroyed the movie theater. They didn't. I think what did is you know, fast Wi-Fi at your house and TV's getting really cheap. It, of course, is going to eat the movie theater's lunch. It doesn't mean that going to the IMAX theater at Lincoln Center is not the most spectacular experience on earth. But I'll do that one, maybe two times a year, and it's for a very special occasion of like a Christopher Nolan movie or a movie on 70mm film. I'm not going to do the same thing that I would have done 20 years ago, which is going to a mall that has 37 screens and seeing something on a screen that's barely the size of my TV with like a floor covered in popcorn and soda. You know, I think one of my big things is I have a little bit of optimism of now the 4 years since I've left LA, it feels like Hollywood has finally woken up to like, okay, digital is television, and we do have a place in this. And look, we still have a boatload of money sitting here that we need to figure out how to invest. And those conversations are starting to happen.
And we have talent, we have platforms.
Exactly, and we have the real estate, right? At the end of the day, like you have nothing but sound stages and space to go make things, and that's what sort of left LA. So I think my only take on the Netflix of it all is I'm a huge fan of this Netflix WBD deal. I think, you know, people like to point Netflix as the enemy, but I think they've been one of the few innovators in Hollywood over the last 20 years.
In a huge way.
And I think they've found a way to monetize an industry that was dying in a way that nobody else has. And so they have the most powerful distribution force on earth. What they've really struggled with is IP creation. And I think the reality is it's really hard to make IP.
Well, originally they weren't doing that.
Exactly.
They were just taking other people's products and streaming.
And then they started investing IP. And I would say, like, you know, House of Cards and some of these early shows were big pieces of IP. But I think, you know, even though they've been spending $15 billion a year, they've really struggled with finding these hits. I think you could say there's three massive ones in the last 10 years: Squid Game, Stranger Things, and newly this K-pop Demon Hunters, which is like the biggest animated movie of the year. It's so much so that they actually put it in theaters after it had come out and made $25 million.
Wow.
K-pop Demon Hunters.
Wow.
And it has everything kids like, right? It's sort of anime, it's K-pop music, but it's a total animated movie for kids. And it's with a fictional band that now is going to go on a global tour and sell out arenas. I mean, it's insane. But I think, again, it's like if you can couple this powerful distribution arm with, in my opinion, the greatest IP library in history. I mean, we're talking everything from the great movies of you know, the original era all the way to like DC movies and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and like my favorite, Looney Tunes and all the Hanna-Barbera characters. I would love to see those animated properties in particular come back to life at a time that I think we're trying to figure out like, what should my kids be watching? I don't really want YouTube to be my kid's babysitter. I don't really trust what they're watching.
And Bugs Bunny is, you know, it's timeless and it's a lot of fun. It's enjoyable.
And so I just think if you can marry those two things, I think this would be a successful merger. And what I would hate to see for Hollywood is another consolidation that just leads to more consolidation 5 years from now.
No, I love that because you're really innovative. You're clearly a visionary when it comes to that, and that's exciting. So there's this new. What's the name of the new production?
So my company is called Gymnasium, and I think again, like
that's your company now.
That's my company now, and I think again, I think the interesting thing is it's been 3 years now, and really excited about what the next chapter looks like, which is a lot more expanding beyond just doing these short form shows. It's a great live streaming.
What is the new movie?
There's a movie coming out, Marty Supreme, Christmas Day.
Right.
It's a movie, it's a fictional biopic of a ping pong master in New York City.
What it was, right.
And it's incredible. It's the best movie I've seen this year. I was saying I'm shocked he's not in it, because about every New Yorker cameo is in that movie. But Timmy is someone that in the marketing of this movie has been starting to integrate live streaming into the process, because again, I think he's found that this is a way to break the internet and break through culture at a time when it's really hard to market movies.
Right. So we got sort of diverted. So anyway, so Adam got the job to be head of production, I guess.
Well, so I'll back it further. So okay. I texted you I think a month before this happened, and I said, hey, I'm working with this kid Aisha Speed. He's like the #1 live streamer on earth. Is there any way he can ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange? Right. And I think Einstein right away was like, you got to be out of your fucking mind. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, well, what if you just gave him a tour of the New York Stock Exchange? He was like, you're fucking crazy. And then it was like the tour had finally started, and I finally had evidence of no, I don't think you understand. This kid is really famous, and this tour is really, really blowing up. And I think one of the biggest things was this live streamer iShow Speed was doing a 35-day straight live stream tour across the United States. It was 35 cities, 25 states, and it was live 24 hours a day. He was filming himself sleeping and everything he was doing during the day. And there was a big responsibility of any city that you went to. You wanted to make sure you were showing that whole city's history. Right. And so New York was the first city that he spent 48 hours in. And I think one of the most important things for us was Wall Street is such the cornerstone of New York's history. I mean, the financial institution is one of the reasons why New York is the great city that it is.
100%.
And so we could not do a trip here without doing a trip down to Wall Street.
Right.
And so I think now at this point, it was the night before.
Right.
And
I said to you, if you can get creative about what, I'd be happy to welcome him to Wall Street.
I sent a long audio note. And I was like, okay, what if we meet at the Bull, and you're going to meet Speed, and you're going to say, Speed, welcome to Wall Street. This is the greatest financial instrument on earth, and here's what a stock is, here's why this is a bull, what's a bull market, what's a bear market. And you essentially gave them a finance lesson. Yeah. And this thing, I think we knew when it was happening, this was really special. Yeah. But I think neither you nor me had any idea of how big this moment would become.
No, and it's become, for me, it's incredibly life-changing, right? I mean, I grabbed Mateo, right? I grabbed my son, a couple of us, we went down there. There was a police escort.
Presidential motorcade.
Right, it was amazing. And, and we interacted literally for 15 minutes, right? And then he was gone, he was off in the wind, and and then maybe 24, 48 hours things were kind of calm. I think he posted something and I posted, you posted something, and then literally things just started exploding, right? And in an exponential fashion.
I mean, I would guess that the clips of that moment probably are now more than 250 million views. I would guess.
Without any
Because I think if you sort of calculate the fact that you grew 750,000 followers in such a short amount of time, that means that the views were exponential.
Correct. We were getting as many as 50 million views on a post, right? Which is wild. But it's so, for me, what's so powerful, and this is something, I came to you the other day and I said, is there any way, could you have warned me how my life was going to change in that, it could be maybe one of the fastest meteoric rises from 250 to 1 million in social, I mean, there are millions of follower people on Instagram.
But that quickly.
Literally it was 8 weeks.
Yeah. I think this is what's really interesting with the world of live streaming, which is that, look, the camera is always on, and you are planning for these clippable moments. You're trying to think, what is this engaging stuff that, the core audience that's watching it live at any given point is probably at 100,000 people. That's not that many. Right. But when you think about that, each being 100,000 people that are obsessed with this content, that have their own fan pages, that are trying to clip this content themselves, if you can give them something that is worth clipping, that if this clip were to go on TikTok with zero other context, it goes viral on its own, that moment's going to blow up. And so the reality is there's so many things that happened on that tour that did not clip, that did not go viral, that we spent so much time planning of an experience that was impossible.
And your hope was that it would.
And that's what the hope is at any given point. But not every time it does. And I think this was one of those just perfect home runs of you and him together was such a odd couple duo that just blew up on the internet.
And it was funny because there was one clip that it was reposted and of me talking to him about the Apple phone, and then talking about that I trade 1 billion shares a day, and the things that got his attention. It's always fascinating to see what to get through to somebody that they don't understand.
And again, you really did teach him. And one of the things I told Peter the next day, or 2 days later, he was in Boston and he toured Harvard. and he met an economics student. And Speed wanted to show off the info that he had just learned. He's like, well, you know what a stock is? A stock is it's everything you're wearing. And actually, if you buy an Apple iPhone, it'll go down, but if you buy the stock, it should hopefully go up. And I was like, he was so proud of repeating his speech.
That.
I'll send it to you, you can repost it.
Oh my God, I would love that. And you know what? Look, if I can do anything, you know what? That is it's the message, and then it's the messenger. It's a matter of how do you? Because look,
100%.
There are plenty of people with great messages.
Yes.
But it's a matter of how do you get the message across.
I mean, I think that, look, at the end of the day, there's nothing new about this. I think there's always been journalists, but then when TV came around, there were broadcast journalists. And it was a very different subset of people that were good about presenting information on television than someone who could just do the work of being a journalist. And I think that, again, sort of the challenge of the old media world really coming at a crossroads with these digital platforms, that they've taken so long to realize that these are the information platforms of today, just like TV was 50 years ago. And we have a responsibility to have people that are super engaging, but also know what they're talking about. And you're one of the only people in the finance space that I think hits those boxes.
You know what? That has been for me an amazing. It's a lucky thing, and I'm humbled by it. That that I got called by like CAA, right? They wanted to manage me or something, and I said like, why me? And they said that we've never seen anyone who has such a broad range of demographic, like literally from a 14-year-old to an 80-year-old,
100%.
right? And that's something that you. I mean, I'm great. So grateful to you for that, because I think you gave me that confidence that I could actually get that across the message, right? Because look, standing here in front of a thing, it's like us behind. You can be anybody you want, right? But actually interacting with the public,
not just interacting, I mean, yelling on the streets to a bunch of strangers.
Exactly.
We did crazy stuff,
right? And it was spectacular. And I did not know I was capable of that. But it was what's amazing is how that getting your message across.
And it was, I mean, again, it was nothing. I was 25 years old at this point. We were kids, and the two guys that were helping me were 22 and 21. And it was a really young team. And I think we were just so excited by the opportunity of making something no one ever made before. But again, it was also funny because it was this combined universe. I mean, there's clips of us coming from a Keep the Meter Running shoot with Kareem. Kareem would be with us for us to then film a video with you, and then Kareem's waiting on the bench to go get dinner after. Like, it was just a cinematic universe of all these characters. And I think what's crazy is now it's so obvious. I think a lot of people are making these social media shows and have these personalities online, but this was 3 years ago. And at that point, this was very fresh and honestly looked down upon, I think.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of hate from Hollywood. People just being like, how dare you call this a show? And it's like only 3 years later do people call and say like, okay, maybe you were right.
You know what though, but what you're great at, and I think is at the end of the day with all of this stuff, you're a storyteller. That goes back to the beginning of time.
100%.
And that's, for me, that's what this is. Like, it's not a matter of like, there's no subject matter that I do, my show is about. I like to tell, it's something I learned from my parents. It's like that my father was a doctor, right? The Holocaust survivor, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he felt that what he was able to achieve as a doctor by just looking someone in the eyes and holding their hand was way more than looking at all their charts and all that stuff. Is that humanism part of it, right? And that interaction, one human being to another, that blows all of the rest of it away. And as we get involved with AI, right, as our truth is going to change, right? I spoke to a lady the other day. She was about to go do a TED talk about, she called her dad, and she said, I noticed, Dad, that you're not going to see your therapist anymore. He's probably in his 80s or something. And he goes, well, I felt like it was a waste of money, so I'm using ChatGPT as my therapist. And she just had this like white light moment going like, wait a minute, if we start to use robots or AI as our advisors and things, at what point are we going to so where is our humanism and where is our truth, right? We're losing, exactly. And that's one thing that we can never do, right? At the end of the day, that's the paradox.
That's the one thing, though, I think that I've always gone back to in that old Hollywood way. Is like I always like to say to people that I think there's just as many stars today, if not fewer, than there ever have been in history. I think there's a lot of people, as a result of the tools never having been more accessible, that think that they're stars because they have a bunch of followers. But a lot of times it's because they were really early to making content in a particular niche, or they're doing something that no one else is doing yet. And I think at the end of the day, like I really love being in the star business of like, I just think this person has exceptional talent, and I want to do anything I can to like bring this person up, because I know that if we just package this the right way, it'll be the most viral thing on the internet. And
you know what? I love that. We could talk forever. I love that about you, and I love that we've connected and reconnected, because It's like my life, my life is literally does not, in a very short period of time, my life does not look anything like it looked before. I was sort of coasting along as a medium-sized influencer and whatnot, but the responsibility, look, for me as somebody who wants to reach more eyeballs and more people and change people's lives in that way, there's nothing better. It's like open doors that I would have never thought that, if this had happened over 15 years, it would not be the same.
Right.
When something happens so quickly, right, but it's sustainable, right, because there's no, I've had my 15 minutes of fame for a long time now, and so, but it keeps morphing into something else. I mean, and I'd love you to be involved. We're
100%.
going to build this, I've connected with this woman who is she's a Bulgarian. She runs a company called Rila Consulting. What she does is she scrapes the internet and social media for consumer trends. And then she reports back to large corporations to show them where they should spend their social media money, right? And she's a master at it. And so she's sort of taken me under her wing, and she wants to create a media empire around all of this stuff, because there's so much potential, right? We can, as we just talked about, we can reach millions of people. And at the end of the day, if you're reaching them with a good message, right, that's it. I mean, that's the cash and prize.
I'm scared that Peter's going to be scared to take my phone calls now, because the first time I called, we grew from 50K to probably I don't know, to I guess 150, 200,000 followers, and then the second time grew to 1 million. So I at this point I'm you're probably gonna be scared to pick up my phone. You don't know what the next one's gonna be.
Now that it'll never happen. I'll be super excited. Anyway, this is so much fun. We've got to do this a little more. Are you in New York now?
I'm in New York. I'm gonna go to LA for a month for the holidays, and then I'll be back. I'm in New York. New York's home.
I think we should really reconnect and do some fun stuff, even with Kareem or whatever.
Have to.
But there's so much potential here that I do not want to drop this ball as far as that goes. You've opened it, you've opened an amazing door, and I want to give it the respect it's due. So.
That's amazing.
And
nothing makes me happier.
Yeah, dude, it's amazing. I love you.
Love you, buddy.
I love you. Adam Faze, go check it out. And look, we didn't even touch half the stuff I wanted to talk about, but you know what? What is this show? I don't even know what I'm calling it today. It's the Einstein of Wall Street from the balcony here with Adam Faze. We're telling the human story to all you humans out there. So you know what? That's all I got to say about that.